Hi everyone, Adriaan Groenewald here. This is ThinkLead, global leadership ecosystem, and we help leaders think and lead on a whole new level in these very difficult times. And what Brian, Eagar and I do, we round up some great CEOs and leaders out there to tell us their thinking and leading in these difficult times. And we're very confident that it will help you in your challenging situation, no doubt. With us today, we've got the Afrimat CEO, Andries van Heerden. We've got Sithega Holdings CEO and co-founder Thabo Dloti. Thabo also serves on several boards like Alexander Forbes and others, some big organizations, so he comes with great perspective. And then Afrox Managing Director Schalk. So some large companies, some interesting organizations, and some great leaders to tell us about their thinking and leading. Gentlemen, welcome to ThinkLead.
Thank you.
Good morning.
And then,
good morning to everyone. Thank you, Adriaan.
Great. And then we've got Brian Eagar, a colleague, and he's executive coach and advisor to leaders like these and many others. And he's been in the industry for many, many decades. Brian, good to have you here as always.
Yeah, I like the way you emphasize decades. The grey, it's definitely, yeah. But Adriaan, to have Thabo, Schalk and Andries on the panel, gentlemen of this ilk, I love being around people like this that challenge our perspectives. They're amazing human beings, all three of them, and fantastic leaders. A real opportunity and a real privilege to have you guys on ThinkLead with Adriaan and I today. So welcome.
Gentlemen, it's about 117 or 18 days now since formal lockdown. And we'd like to hear your thinking about this as a leader. Just in general, where are you at personally? Where is your business at? What can you share regarding that? And but really, let's just do a bit of thinking here. Let's kick off with Schalk at the top of my screen left, and then we'll go to Andries and then Thabo. Gents, tell us what your thinking is.
Adriaan, thank you. Looking back at the past 117 days, it's getting easier. I read an interesting quote the other day which said that once you start acting on what life wants from you, what you want from life will follow. And I think that's been our mantra at Afrox, that we really need to adopt, and for myself as well, to these difficult conditions, because the world has been turned upside down. No matter how humorous we look at it, or with what humor, or how serious we look at it, it's different. I mean, what is safe yesterday is not safe today. The financial markets, investments, balance sheets, pension funds, the physical safety of people, ourselves. We worry about the safety of our families. And of course, financial security. Where's the world going to? But I think in the beginning, it was really tough because we had to install all the physical safety systems, because we still have to operate. An essential service provider to many industries, especially the healthcare industry. We had to make sure that, number one, our employees those who had to go to work, because you have now people essential from that point of view, they've got to be on the site. They have to do certain tasks. You've got people delivering stuff. They come in contact with other people that increase the risk of disease. So we really had to focus on that to make sure, number one, that our people are safe at work. So physical safety, the first 2 months, the first month and a half or so was really, really important to embed that. I'm not going to go through a number of things we did, but I think our team has done miracles to establish that, to give the frontline employees the physical safety platform to do their tasks from, and then to answer the call of what the world wants from us. Secondly, to create a communication system that reaches quite deep inside the corners of the organization, because not everybody's got all the answers in these days. But if as leadership we try to harness all that knowledge, and get the team to then make decisions, it's far better decisions than a singular decision made by one or two other people. So I think that platform was created, which also creates emotional safety space, so that people can air their views, they can share their fears, and with that, their fears and concerns. And by that, I think a very strong platform was created to continue doing through the storm and well into the future what is required of us. So it was difficult. I think we've arrived to some successes. I think the opportunity also is now to harness as a leadership team and a culture that moves away from having just a functional working system, which you've got to have. I mean, you've got to have proper manufacturing, safety, distribution, invoice. You know, the whole commercial system has to work. Mm. But on top of that, that system works so much better if eventually we can create a team that, bound by same values, actually work together, collaborate to deliver on the purpose. You know, and I think that's, for us, that journey has been hugely invigorating emotionally. Looking left and right, there's a colleague there that's got your back. There are not one leader anymore, they're a team of leaders, albeit the top leadership job is to make sure that the harnessing of ideas and interventions will deliver on the purpose of the company. That has been, yeah, I think that's my comment to now. We've arrived, I think, in, I would say, a better space, but a much improved space in terms of collaboration, input from the whole of the company, the sharing of ideas. Yeah, it's been a fantastic journey for us. It's been difficult, and it will remain difficult, because we still got to do those physical things of making sure safety is first, making sure we care our employees, making sure there's enough hand sanitizer on 100+ sites in 11 countries in Africa. That remains difficult. But I think the leadership, the ability of the team has been lifted. So it's been for us a fantastic journey, despite the difficulties.
Thank you, Schalk. I mean, I've heard that so much. People just rise to the occasion. Andries, your thinking at the moment?
Yeah, Adriaan, very similar to what Schalk had just described. You know, going back to there in the last week of March, we actually formed what we called a war room a couple of days before the lockdown was announced. You know, remember the president spoke to the nation on a Sunday evening, telling us that they were calling or creating a state of disaster. Then the next morning we created a war room, and what worked very well for us is, in a very, very short space of time, we got the real core of the leadership together. We created a communication system right from there, where we started communicating to our entire workforce throughout the country. And I think we've got a little bit of a advantage over what Schalk has said, because most of our people are actually concentrated in South Africa. So we only had one jurisdiction really to worry about, which I think probably made Schalk's job even more difficult, you know, looking at more than one jurisdiction. But so we created a communication system that actually worked, and I think we're going to carry that into the future. It works really well. Next thing we did was to make sure that we've got people responsible for collecting information, getting communication that comes from government in terms of new regulations, how things are changing, get that information accurately and quickly and work through it. So if some communication came out in the evening, we would, in the next morning at 8:30 when we met in the virtual space, we would be updated. Somebody would work through the night and make sure that they get that information. So that was a very important part. And then, as we moved into the hard lockdown, we focused on a couple of things. The one thing is that extreme uncertainty in the beginning. We tried to give something close to certainty to our people. We very quickly, through our information systems, looked to, we were in a very fortunate position that we could pay our people throughout the lockdown their full salaries, and we were very grateful for that. And that was a big thing for them very early in the days, to give them that certainty and say, don't worry, we will pay your salary. I must say that when the lockdown was extended, that was a bit of a flurry. But fortunately, once again, when everybody else was having a Good Friday, we were having meetings and worked through some information and came to some conclusions, and we communicated that evening to our entire workforce and put their minds at ease and said, we'll carry on paying. But so the decision making with that team of leaders, harnessing of the ideas, what Schalk was referring to, that real synergy that comes from people that are really committed to a common cause, getting their inputs, making, really caring about their people, making sure, knowing what is in the hearts and the minds of their people and the uncertainty and the fear and how we could address that. That was a very interesting part of that early couple of weeks of the lockdown. We learned that reacting quickly was absolutely critical. So if there's a new set of rules announced tonight, try and communicate within 24 hours to your workforce how this is going to impact, what is going to happen. Yeah. Now, we were very grateful that we could open our iron ore mine within a week after the lockdown started, and communicating to our people, giving them the peace of mind that we will look after their health as well as we possibly can. How are we going to change to make sure that social distancing and all the rest is in place and all those things. So the communication was absolutely critical. That quick reaction was critical. And then being pragmatic, there were certain things that we didn't want. We didn't want certain things, but that's just the way it was, and accept the brutal facts and act on that. So that was quite interesting. And then the other thing that I found very powerful is once you've got people trusting you, that you are looking out for their best interest, and they understand that their best interest is also to look after the company's best interest, you sort of unleash an energy that we found very, very useful when the lockdown started easing, when we went into level 4 and level 3. We started getting our operations back because we had some of our operations were in complete lockdown. They were shut completely. And the energy that was unlocked when these people came back to work and really wanted to make a difference because they understood how important it was for the business to get back up and running as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. It's just amazing how quickly they adapted to all the new protocols and how they lived up to it. And I can remember the first positive COVID case that we had at one of our mines. How, we got the information on a Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock. There were 164 people on site. That evening by 8 o'clock, we tested every single person on site. We isolated, we sanitized. That Monday morning, the mine was back in production. And we had 2 positive cases on the mine. We isolated them, we gave them the support. And the interesting thing is how that crisis actually turned into an opportunity to energize the people. So that's the point I wanted to make. So that's just maybe a few remarks on our thinking, how we did it, and let's leave it at that for now.
Now we're seeing some interesting things, Brian. How employees are returning back to work with a different level of accountability. And in some organizations, 100% performance or 80% performance with half their people, that sort of thing. And you're kind of saying, how do we navigate that as leaders now? And we want to keep the jobs. We don't want to let go of more people. There's a lot of interesting dilemmas that leaders have to face. Thabo, your current thinking?
Yeah, thank you so much for the Andries and Schalk sharing. I think it's interesting how we all have been confronted with the same problem, yet I suppose given where we stand, we've had to respond differently. I think the first part is going into this crisis. I didn't know what it was like going to war. I don't want to sound like Trump, but it feels like that, where you don't know actually what the outcome is going to be, because you go with it with a set of assumptions. When this thing started, because of the lockdown timing that was given to us, it kind of conjured a picture of something that is an end in mind. So we all planned. I remember we activated our business continuity plans with a view of it's a lockdown period is going to be 1 month, 2 months, at most 3 months. So what are the plans we're going to put in place as different organizations to survive? And then in my small business, Sithega, where we were doing transactions, we obviously paused things. We spoke about pausing them. We're pausing them so that after the lockdown, we can resume and continue. I think for me, the mindset that we started thinking that this thing is finite in its construct from a timing point of view, therefore we could plan and survive for a period, was clear. As we went into it, obviously, as we learned and got more information, we are realizing that we don't know when it's going to end. Of course, human beings, we want certainty. So the planning has moved into various organizations, including my own, where we are now trying to say, okay, if the peak is in September, what will happen? How do we survive until September? For me, that has been a very interesting observation, certainly, how we plan and organize the resources that we plan with. You have to look at the resources you have, how long they can survive for the problem that I understand to be. We want to quantify that problem and understand what it is. I think COVID has taught me something more than that actually as a leader, you have to plan for the reality that you face. We have moved, I think, in the last, since the kind of when the levels were announced and we realized the president could not quite call it, whether we're on level 3 or level 2, and the uncertainty that ensued afterwards. For me, it was the first realization that actually to ascribe knowledge to some government or somebody to say they know better how this thing is going to work is false. I, as a leader, have to step up and accept that there is a lot that's unknown. Now we have to plan with unknown that's indefinite. That was the scary part for me, because actually we don't know how long it will run for. We don't know the magnitude of it is going to be. We can postulate all we like, we don't know. But we still have to lead. We still have to organize the resources. We still have to provide hope and clarity to people in terms of where they need to focus. That has been, for me, probably the biggest learning as a leader that I've had to encounter. Because this ability to confront a problem where it's not a market, it's not a competitor, it's not a client that is going to take a contract away from me. It's actually something that is affecting everybody. And yet all of us are trying to find constructs that help us to define it. That has been a really difficult, but also probably the biggest aha moment for me in terms of where we are. Where I find the different organizations that I'm part of, as I said, starting with my small organization, we were in the middle of transactions that were defining for our business. All that has changed. We now have to think differently around what the future would look like. And we know it's going to be different, but we know equally that we have to show up in that different organization with a lot more uncertainty than we have ever had before. So the false notion of saying we knew exactly when we arrived in January what we needed to do, because we kind of had a construct of the market, it's out of the window. So that was actually a little bit hard, but actually once you've accepted it, it's amazing how it mobilizes people, that they stop anchoring themselves on the knowns. They start accepting the unknowns, but they try to be fluid around it. Because we are no longer scared anymore. When somebody says it's going to be extended by whatever period, we actually are saying, what do we do then? As opposed to, what are we going to do now? It's like, it's a different response. So I think the collaboration that Andries raised, it was Schalk raised. We are collaborating better because we are now ready for the unknown. And we've accepted that we don't know how it's going to pan out, but we still have to kind of chart a future for ourselves. So that's observation. The second observation, and the change in thinking is obviously equally the narrative. I'm finding that the narrative around the changes that have occurred. Initially, there was a high trust in the government, and there's a low trust in the government now that is in the public domain regarding how they are handling the situation. Luckily, in one of my businesses, we have got a lot of international people that are participating who are actually responding exactly the same way as well, that the trust and belief in the governments to respond to this thing and provide guidance that is crisp and clear is very, it doesn't seem to be the place where you look into. So again, that has helped us, because we now are saying, what opportunities does these things create? Because think about it. if everybody's actually in a bit of a loss, they actually have to, there ought to be opportunities, because everybody's kind of running scared in a way. If you think about it, because we don't know, and I'm not genuinely, I'm not saying it because I'm belittling what people's responses are. Smoke, so to speak, feels like that. And that's, again, has been, for me, surprising for me, how then that galvanizes people when they think that in what's happening, they ought to look for opportunities. And if they do find them, they could actually be defining things for themselves, and they could be defining things for the organization. A simple thing like in my office, our COO, we tasked her when we've decided, certainly we're a small team, we've decided that every person has to own something that's going to lead us through this, that's going to help them have something to do, help us to lead us through that. So the COO, obviously, she's doing the numbers, she's planning for what's going to happen, COO, CFO. One of the things she says that, look, financially, we've got 18 months. That's what when we started the year, that's where we are. Now, financially, we've got 6 months. If this thing, we don't do these transactions, we don't do this thing, 6 months is all we have. And that's been the mindset that she brought to the team, rightfully so. But in taking ownership, say each person has to take ownership of how they help us to define where we are. It's amazing how she has come up with things that have given us a lease of life and out of certainty. She has changed how we use office space in a practical way. So we've changed our leases. We're one of those organizations that have changed completely, permanently, how we're going to work. We've changed how we support ourselves from technology, from all other things. And what has surprised me is how then we are a very different organization now than when we started. And that example is about what she had to do in giving herself a sense of sanity, so that because she was just worried about how long we're going to survive for. And by just worrying about that and doing something about it, she has found opportunities to double our life expectancy, so to speak, as a business from a financial point of view. I'll stop there. I'm just really highlighting that it's just, for me, that has been really interesting, that uncertainty has created innovation by just looking at it differently, and also not anchoring around when this thing or things are going to end, has helped, certainly, as much as it scares me. It has helped to reframe the problem that we are dealing with.
Okay, thank you, Thabo Dloti there. So, James, Brian's just going to capture some key thoughts, and then I'm going to ask you to tell us what your thinking is around leadership. So let's see this as a real case study, a real life case study that may have redefined how we lead, how we think about leadership, how we think about leaders. And tell us what you've learned about leadership. A little bit more detail, a little bit more in depth from what you've shared with us. Brian?
Yeah, the nicest thing about what I've enjoyed with the three gents that have shared, our last 2 panel interviews, and we were lucky enough and privileged enough to interview gents like David de Villiers, Leon Lawrence, CV, Philip Kotze, Neil Kluti, Francois Hardy, all gentlemen like yourselves. And what's fantastic about this is the following. They all said, communicate, provide clarity and provide certainty as quickly as possible so that you are able to afford peace of mind. Even in these very difficult times, provide that clarity and provide certainty. Collaborate. Schalk, you referenced it. Andries, you alluded to it again. And Thabo, you touched on it. Collaborate. And collaborate as a leadership team, because it's better together as one individual, and as opposed to one individual doing what they would be doing. Act quickly. Be pragmatic. What I really enjoyed was look after our staff. If you look after the staff, they will look after the clients. And Andries, you spoke and emphasized that. If you take care of them, they will. If they know they're safe, they know they're certain, they will look after those clients. Thabo, urgency, but in a controlled manner. And then you said as well, time for leadership to step up. And it wasn't just leadership as an individual, but leadership as the collective. Let's step up, let's take responsibility together. And that spoke to that collaborative aspect. And the fantastic thing about this is all 9 of you, the other 6 gents that I mentioned, plus you 3, you all reference the same thing. So as a learning, You know, Adriaan, if we had to take this through as a learning, as a case study, all 9 consistent from in their messages to us, and that will be great to the market. It'll be great for those that get to listen to this. So yeah, fantastic. Thanks, gents. Adriaan, to you.
Okay, gents, what have you learned about leadership? How do you think about leadership now? And maybe sneak in there how you keep people accountable. How do you make people accountable when there's such a darn good excuse to not perform all over the place? But yet you've got to, as a leader, hold them accountable. So what's your trick up the sleeve for other leaders who may be struggling with that sort of challenge? I think let's go again. Let's go the same format. Schalk, you want to kick us off?
Thank you, Adriaan. I think I spoke previously about purpose. So I think the leader's job is to harness the rest of the organization behind that purpose, so that we realize that we work for a greater good here. We work for, we all need some sort of income to survive in this world. But if that's a result of meeting our purpose, we've met the greater good, and we've contributed to much bigger than just our own sphere or our own area of operation. I think then, so passionate about the purpose, I think then intellectual and I would rather say intellectual honesty. So I think the leader and the leadership team has got to scan, I think, and Thabo alluded to this, looking for opportunities. There will be opportunities. In a changing world, there will be opportunities. So I think it's their job also to scan the outside world, look for macro trends in their markets and opportunities, and still bring that back, and ask how do we potentially grow into this or capitalize on this or provide a service that we get, benefit from. So I think that's even more accentuated today because markets are depressed and suppressed and earnings are difficult. And this could be any opportunity out there, including, moving to a more savings culture. How can I do things more efficiently with what I've got? So I think that's a theme that I certainly see coming through. Of course, empathy in these days is everything. And it's not necessarily that we have to cover ourselves or our employees in cotton wool. Accountability, you asked how do you keep people accountable. Accountability is a tough concept. But I think the empathy comes in to understand the situation, what whoever finds themselves in, and then offering the support and even collaborating to the extent where they can overcome, to reach those goals and those tough objectives that's been set for all of us. I mean, so I think empathy and accountability actually goes hand in hand. I don't think you can have the one without the other, because then the outcome will mean nothing. And then I still want to comment about thinking continuously about a continuous improvement. So I think, albeit the softer themes do come through, the hard business side of looking at opportunities and how do I still serve my customer but still get rewarded for it. And secondly, then to drive the system of the company. So, all those little processes put together to create this commercial system to continuously scrutinize that. And what we do, does it add value? If it doesn't add value or serve a greater purpose, why are we doing it? So I think so it's a balance between commercial, financial, operational, but then also bringing the strong leadership of people and getting that theme right, not just for yourself, but I think for the whole leadership team. We now have a regular call with the top 100 in the company, and these are the things we talk about, once a month. 3 times a week we talk to the top 30. So, and those themes are being woven into the discussions on a continuous basis, and eventually more and more people find themselves on the same platform, with the same outlook. So there's a shared purpose. I think that's the strength and I think that's the leader's role, to harness all those concepts into a company which is a living, moving, emotional thing, that's still got to do all these tasks required of it. So that would be my comment around leadership.
All right. As we go to Andries, Schalk, has this changed you as a person?
Yeah, massively. I mean, the learning, well, firstly, you learn that you know a lot less than what you thought. So it's a bit humiliating. Then secondly, if you see the quality of the people and how unselfish they sometimes step in without you even asking them to. And how energetic, I think we all spoke about the energy released. If it's the only thing we can do is to manage in that way, because you cannot walk into someone's office today and say, have a look at this, have a look at this. It's got to be in this way, and it's got to be collaborative. So I think it's changed my style as a leader completely. Far more collaborative, but still we should not lose sight of what has to be delivered, because we still have shareholders out there. We still have people expecting our products to be delivered on time. We have the taxman that once he's cut off, the balance scorecard type concept. We need to deliver on all of those. Okay. But I think with greater leadership capability and maybe a bit more humility, it's certainly changed my view on what's possible. And what the goal that sits in people is just unbelievable.
Okay. Thank you. Andries, before you share what you've learned in leadership, has this changed you?
I think it hasn't changed in the sense that I've come to new understanding of new conclusions, but it has definitely reinforced certain things that I knew before, but it wasn't as prominent and it wasn't as strong. And I think it's honed my leadership thinking a lot. And so it's developed, but not necessarily changed.
Okay.
In my view.
Okay.
All right. So, Adriaan, in terms of leadership, leadership happens in a certain context, and that context, in our case, was created over a matter of years. I'm fortunate to have been in this position for a couple of years already. So the environment was created over many years. We've spent a lot of work on creating a specific culture, the Afrimat way of doing things, that was created before. And that has empowered me as a leader and the rest of our team to actually lead within an environment that is known to us. I think we have 5 pillars on which we try to lead. Firstly, the first pillar is what we call modeling the way. That is being authentic, coming back to the purpose that Schalk was referring to. Why are we here? What are we doing? And living and being authentic and being consistent, so that people can learn that they can trust you. Live your values, and don't talk about a set of values that differs from where you are. That came through so strongly in this. If you didn't have that, and you all of a sudden started jumping around, and we had a value in the past that we care for people, but now we said, okay, we've got a lot of cash in the bank, but we're not going to pay you because we've got a reason not to. Then that would not be living our values. So that was the first one, modeling the way. The second thing is in terms of creating a positive future expectation, creating that vision. Where are we going? Schalk spoke about the opportunities, and he's so right. There are so many new opportunities that has opened up. Making sure that people become energized about that, set targets, and make sure that people pick up on trends and be realistic. The third leg of our leadership model, we say enable others to act. That comes back to your point of keeping people accountable. If you can trust your people and they are focused on the same targets and they are energized, you don't actually have to worry about keeping them accountable. They keep themselves accountable. And measure the outcomes, make sure that you are focused on the outcomes, pick up on deviations early and then act on that. But as a collective, I actually learned, you're asking about learn. The one thing I've learned is that I can actually really trust my people. They have the same goals that I have, and I don't have to worry whether they are working or not when they're at home. They will be working because they focused on the same targets. With very few exceptions. Is that true? The fourth leg of our leadership model is challenging the process. Allowing people, relatively junior people in the organization to actually call you for a Zoom meeting and challenging and say, I'm not sure that you guys are on the right track here. And giving people the opportunity to actually really do that, and then not to be upset by that, but actually take the benefit of a different angle. So that's interesting. Coming back to Schalk's point of sometimes admitting that you don't know everything and the little bit of humiliation that goes with that. You know, that to me is a very, very interesting thing, and that has come through stronger because all of a sudden they don't have to walk into the fancy corner office. Well, I don't have a fancy corner office, but, as a figure speaking, but all he needs to do is go sit in front of his computer, and I sit on the other side of the computer, so he feels I'm more accessible, although I try to be accessible for our people. But considering that they spread all over the country, it's difficult for a guy working in Shushluwi to walk into my office. But now all of a sudden he can ask whether he can have a Zoom meeting with me. So that challenging the process is the third part. And then a very interesting thing and a very fulfilling part of our leadership model is what we call encourage the heart. So we, going back to many years, Ken Blanchard's model of catching people doing things right. We have an active, and it's part of our weekly, what we call a BPR, a business performance review. The last point on the agenda is performance recognition. Who is that person that I can give a phone call on his or her cell phone and be specific on what they've done and congratulate them on the contribution they did and thank them for that. It's just amazing how that creates culture, and it's very interesting. I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and I just had I had the first phone call from one of our staff the other day who phoned me to give me recognition about something, and I was almost in tears. That's the first time it ever happened to me, it was interesting. But so the 5 things: modeling the way, creating that vision, enabling others to act, challenge the process, and fifthly, encourage the heart. That was our model before, and it just came through so much stronger in this crisis.
Okay. Very powerful. Thank you, Andries. And Thabo, I don't want to ask you the same question. Have you changed? But the impact on you personally, people want to know, they want to know that our leaders out there are human, and it comes through in these sessions. So you're welcome to comment on that if you want. But in essence, just dig a little bit deeper. To give us a few minutes just on what you've learned from leadership perspective. Are you happy you're not leading one of these large listed entities at this time, which you've done?
So thank you. I think leading, can I just start with the last question you raised, just because it's top of mind, about accountability, holding people accountable. I really want to highlight what Andries has said. I have not struggled to find people that are willing to work harder and be present to make sure we succeed. That is actually one of the things for me that has come through this, that the belief in humanity has been increasing phenomenally through the process. People are willing to work endless hours just to create certainty for the success of the enterprise they're at. People are realizing the value of just being employed and having a career that is paying. And so I have not struggled to actually find people to hold people accountable because they're there. What I've found, though, is that there is a franticness to want to do something, because I feel like if I don't do anything, I may actually find out I don't have a job. It's just a primary instinct in people to say, I need to actually find something to do and demonstrate I'm doing that. So the ability then to focus people on things that they can do that are going to make a difference has been important, both in my organization and in the other organizations where I'm chairing. I've realized that the good conversations of visiting, okay, guys, what are we going to do? And why are we doing it? How is it going to help us? And repeating that message, that mantra, has really helped people to move from being really concerned and worried and focusing their attention to what they can do and what they can drive. And that has created a momentum of its own. So leadership, by being accessible to those issues, and I think one of the gentlemen raised this, the accessibility as a leader is so important. People want to access you and engage you, even just to prove that I still have a job, the company is still fine. Hearing what you have to say, including saying, I'm not sure I understand what's going to happen next week, but I suggest we go and do X and Y and Z. People seem to want accessible leadership. And Andries is right, because they can ask for a Zoom meeting, because it has made a world of difference that you can manage that accessibility differently. For me, it has changed my life forever. That accessibility is not about creating a meeting in my diary. It's about, I've always said, you can WhatsApp me, I'll respond, but trying to set up a meeting is difficult. Zoom has changed that because you can see me as well. We can actually do that immediately. So that has changed me as a leader, that actually accessibility is not about walking the floor. We all talk about walking the floor, being present, and we can be present differently, and that is important. So that has changed certainly how I think about that. The second part that I think it's important that I'm learning is the agility. I truly believe that being agile to the situations that finding ways of responding, be it challenging people issues, be it challenging circumstances. In 2 organizations I'm involved in as a chairperson, we've had a difficulty in how the board relates to the management. And COVID has been a godsend thing to smash that, because we've had to actually, all of us, think differently and say, hang on, we are here for a common purpose. Let's get over it, get over ourselves and look at what is it that we're doing right that we can do well? What is it that we're not doing well? Let's deal with that, because we've got survival in front of us. And then the ability to really find our way around obstacles quickly and then galvanize ourselves to move forward, for me, has been incredible in terms of what that has done. So the agility, how we respond in our minds as leaders, is important. I think the last point has been raised. I just want to emphasize authenticity. I think all of us have been challenged to show up. I think there are so many things that I thought I was, and this process has really shown them whether they are. I used to think that I really communicate well, but now I realize actually you really have to learn to communicate really, really well. And if you say what you mean, you really have to walk it through, because everything is under microscope, because all of us are doing these videos, all of us are having to account. We can't hide. It is not much that's happening. So authenticity has become a really, really important issue. And we are seeing how people showing their colors is actually useful. Different leaders are different. Authenticity doesn't mean that we all have to be the same, but at least we know where you are, we know where you stand, and then people buy into that a lot better than the facade you are putting in front of them. So for me, I think those are the lessons that I've picked up. And authenticity is emerged. The circumstances have forced it. We've needed to be agile a lot more than I thought before, and I'm taking that on board. The issue of being accessible, it's an important element that I'm going to take on board. But accountability really has been, people are much more accountable. Our job is to actually give them things to channel their energies towards, and that's been, again, useful as well.
I think we've got to draw to a close. So Brian, I'm going to bring you at the end, but I want each of you to give us 30 seconds on the next 6 months. What are you going to say to leaders? What must they do? But literally a summary, 3 key points or 2 key points that you think they must keep in mind. And then Brian, you'll summarize it all for us at the end. Schalk?
Adriaan, I think that for the next 6 months and even a bit longer, that safety first. This is emotional safety and personal safety of workers. So I think leadership will have to really focus on that. Just an example, at Afrox, for example, when we do deliveries, our drivers, when they deliver bulk oxygen or whatever product to the customer, they don't have to sign paper, they don't have to handle pens given by people from the other companies. So I think even small things to ensure the safety of your people, the physical safety and health, is going to be a theme that leadership will have to focus on. Secondly, the continuing of this collaboration and forming collaborative teams and making joint decisions, but the leader is to access that knowledge through the collaborative approach. And then I think digitization will play a bigger role. I mean, even for us at Afrox now, we are rethinking the head office concept. Do you still have a head office? Do you have does everybody have an office? Or do we have maybe office space that could at any given time accommodate 50% of our staff, but there's a hot desk concept. So, you don't have to be in the office every day. So we give people a choice. If you want to be in the office, you book your desk, you do your work. So I think that choices, giving people freedom, trusting them, and I think continue to focus on the opportunities that, every market will have its winners and losers, or every crisis will have its winners and losers. And I think it's our job to make sure that we remain winners.
Thank you. Andries, very quickly, next few months?
I think 3 things. Firstly, I think keep your sanity. there's a lot of psychological pressure on us and our people. Keep your sanity, do those things that you enjoy. I love mountain biking, do that. The second thing is less talk and more do. I think as a country, we've become exceptionally good at talking. Let's get the job done. And that starts from government all the way down. Stop having all these symposiums and all these conferences and stuff. Let's get some real work done. And that's going to be a big focus in our business now well, we've always been good executors, but just make sure that we keep that. And thirdly, I think the opportunities that are opening up, in our space, for instance, this whole new drive from government in infrastructure spending things, it's enormous opportunities. Let's make sure that we don't miss one. And we execute on that. And I think we can actually come out a lot stronger than what most of the doom prophets are actually saying. So those are the three things. Keep your sanity, less talk, more do, and go for the opportunities.
Excellent. Thabo?
Yeah, I mean, three things certainly from my side are harness the innovation that has been started by this crisis. Innovation around new business models, new ways of working. That's a big emphasis we're driving. How do we harness that and actually drive that going forward? Because it has taught us so much that we can do things differently. And that's important that we continue to do that. I think the work-life balance, it's actually been highlighted to the fore. We have had to spend time with our families a lot closer. We have had to listen to family situations that are very difficult as our colleagues were struggling in their Zoom. It really has for me, it has put strong focus that you have to take care of your people properly. Actually, you have to think about them holistically as opposed to just, are they going to pitch at work or not? So certainly for me, the consciousness around humanity, which is why I feel we're getting so much collaboration and so much productivity, because people know you care about their circumstances you're trying. We've had to go and install devices for them to help them to work at home. We're allowing them to sort out their families when the school closes because of COVID. We are a lot more involved in our employees' lives than we've been before. And that has been really incredible for me, that actually if we do that well, people sign up for more and people are working longer hours than they've done before without complaining because they know we care. So that's the second part. At a personal level, I really feel that looking for those big opportunities, I absolutely agree with Andries. Infrastructure is a big spend that's going to happen to turn around this country. How do we play a role in that? And how do we make sure we merge, create businesses that are going to actually capture that opportunity and grow? It's really where we're focusing our attention. Thank you.
Brian, so sorry to do this to you, but man, good luck in summarizing that quickly at the end. So much to summarize.
Communication, communication, communication. Schalk said it throughout the entire interview. Andries said it. Thabo said it. Whether it's reinforcing the purpose, whether it's reinforcing safety, whether it's reinforcing messaging, whether it's acknowledging people, how we go about acknowledging, whether it's sharing opportunities and collaborating, everything that's been said has always been around. Make sure that you engage, you communicate, and you create safety. Thank you. And thank you to you, gents. You've been outstanding.
Yeah.
Schalk, Thabo, outstanding. What a privilege.
That's Afrimat CEO Andries van Heerden, Thabo Dloti, Sithega Holdings CEO and co-founder, and Afrox Managing Director, Schalk Venter. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I mean, that was absolutely incredible. Thank you for joining ThinkLead, and we know this will help and empower a lot of leaders out there. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's ThinkLead. That's ThinkLead, helping you think and lead on a whole new level. Thank you for joining us. Cheers, everyone.